They smiled like everything was fine, like my daughter wasn't stranded in one of the world's most dangerous countries, without a passport, without a phone signal, and without a single person who cared. When I asked where she was, they laughed. When I found out what really happened, I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just started making decisions. This isn't about revenge, it's about what happens when you finally see your family for what they really are. And what you do when they leave your child behind, thinking you'd stay quiet. They were wrong. The sun was already beating down hard by the time Marcus and I stepped through the grand marble entrance of the Maravista Resort. It should have felt like paradise. Glass doors wide open to the ocean breeze, staff offering cool towels and drinks, palm trees swaying like something out of a travel commercial. But my stomach twisted before I even crossed the lobby. Something was off. I glanced around, scanning the smiling faces of my family, lounging near the check-in counter. My parents were chatting with a bellhop. My sister Vanessa was adjusting her sunglasses and waving her hands as she told some exaggerated story. Ruby, her daughter, scrolled on her phone. Zane tossed a granola bar wrapper into a nearby planter and grinned like he'd gotten away with something. But Lena wasn't there. I did a second scan, slower this time. Maybe she was grabbing water, maybe in the restroom, maybe just trailing behind us through customs. But my mind had already locked onto the dread blooming in my chest. "Do you see her?" I asked Marcus, my voice low. He scanned the space quickly. "No." I stepped closer to Vanessa. "Hey, where's Lena?" She blinked at me like I'd asked something strange. "Lena? Oh, she's probably sorting out her stuff, airport things." "What things?" I pressed, keeping my voice even. "She was supposed to land with you all." Vanessa waved her hand vaguely. "There was some issue with her passport. Probably just delayed." I felt Marcus shift beside me. He was quiet, but I could feel his attention sharpen, the way it always did when something smelled wrong. "Passport issue?" he asked calmly. My father, lounging with a drink in hand, chimed in without looking up. "She lost it during the layover. Must be figuring it out now." My throat tightened. "What layover?" "Oh, didn't we tell you?" my mother said, casually flipping through a resort brochure. There was a change of plans. Our original flight got cancelled. We rerouted. Marcus found a great deal. Marcus froze. "You rerouted?" "Yep," my dad said proudly. "Nabari. Quicker, cheaper, lots of open seats." The air in my lungs turned cold. "You went through Nabari?" I said, nearly a whisper. My mum shrugged. "It wasn't a big deal. Lena just didn't keep her passport secure, I guess." Ruby looked up for the first time. "She totally freaked out, like meltdown level freaked," Zane snorted. "She looked like she was about to cry. I thought she might pass out." They laughed. They actually laughed. My body went still. "You all left her behind?" I asked. Voice barely holding steady, my mother scoffed. "Claire, don't be dramatic. She's 18. She said she'd handle it." "And you believed her?" Marcus said, his voice quieter now, but edged with steel. Dad shrugged. "We're here. What else were we supposed to do?" The question echoed in my head like a drum. What else were we supposed to do? Maybe mention it when you arrived. Maybe not reroute through a country with a level 4 travel advisory. Maybe wait, stay, care. I didn't say any of that, not yet. I stared at them, my parents, my sister, my niece and nephew, and for a moment it felt like I was looking at strangers, not just strangers, smiling strangers, relaxed, unbothered, like my daughter being stranded somewhere dangerous without ID was just another travel hiccup. I looked at Marcus. His jaw was set. I saw in his eyes the same thing I felt in my gut. The creeping realization that this wasn't an accident, maybe not entirely, and that was the moment it hit me. They weren't sorry. They weren't worried. They weren't even pretending. What do you mean she lost it? I asked, arms crossed tightly across my chest. My voice was calm, but something inside me had locked up. Every instinct I had was on fire. She must have dropped it somewhere, my dad said, taking a slow sip from his glass. Probably during the layover. I stared at him. What layover? The original flight was direct. My mother sighed like I was being exhausting. The airline changed the route. Marcus found a better deal. 2 layovers, same destination. He did great. I turned to Marcus slowly. He shook his head, already catching on. I didn't book your flight. Claire and I booked ours separately. You all said you wanted to travel together. That's why we flew ahead. My mum blinked, then looked toward my dad. Didn't you... No, it was me, my dad interrupted, puffing his chest a bit. I spoke with the airline directly. They didn't list it online, but I asked. Got us a great price. I felt something inside me dip. An emotional vertigo. What country did you lay over in? My dad raised an eyebrow like it was a strange question. Nabari. Marcus went rigid. Nabari, he echoed, voice lower now. Yeah, my dad said casually. What about it? I stepped back half a pace, like the name itself had reached out and slapped me. That's a level 4 advisory zone. The US literally says do not travel. There's no embassy there. Vanessa finally looked up from adjusting her straw hat. It was just a layover. We didn't even leave the airport. You left my daughter in Nabari, I said, more to myself than anyone else. She lost her passport, my mum snapped. Did anyone stay with her? Marcus asked, voice tight. Silence. Vanessa rolled her eyes. We couldn't all miss the connecting flight. She said she'd be fine. She's 18, my father added again, as if that made it reasonable. Marcus stepped in now, just slightly ahead of me. Claire, breathe, he murmured, but I couldn't, not properly. My breaths came shallow and sharp, like my body had decided it was time to panic, even if my face hadn't caught up yet. My brain was spinning. Nabari, no embassy, no ID, no adults, no family, and they just left her. When was the last time you heard from her? I asked, trying to keep my hands from shaking. We told her to stay by the airport desk, my mother said. Someone would help. Help how? I demanded. She had no documents, no way to prove her identity, and Nabari isn't exactly known for tourist hospitality. You're overreacting, Vanessa said, inspecting her nails. I turned to Ruby. Did Lena say anything before you left? Ruby shrugged. She didn't want to go through Nabari. She said it wasn't safe. She kept freaking out, Zane added. Like, seriously. Made a huge deal out of nothing. It wasn't nothing, I snapped. It was Nabari. Marcus pulled out his phone and began typing furiously. I knew him well enough to guess he was checking flights. She was just scared, Zane continued, like he was explaining why a toddler cried. Honestly, she was kind of annoying about it. Kept saying we were going to get kidnapped. She was right to be scared, Marcus said, not looking up. She's in a country with no US support, no passport, no family. That's not fear, that's survival. Relax, my mum said sharply. It's not like she's in a war zone. She's in Nabari, I repeated, and you left her. The words sat heavy in the air. I could see the shift in Marcus's posture, his shoulders more squared, the line of his jaw sharper. He felt it too now, the depth of what they'd done. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't bad luck. It was something else. Something darker. The moment fractured when Vanessa chuckled. It wasn't a nervous laugh or a guilty one. It was light, effortless. Like we were all standing around the pool sipping cocktails, swapping harmless travel mishaps. She was such a mess, she said, waving her hand like she was swatting at an invisible bug. You should have seen her face when she realised the passport wasn't in her bag. Ruby giggled behind her phone. She looked like someone had just died. Yeah, Zane added, eyes gleaming. She started tearing through her stuff, breathing all weird, mumbling to herself. I thought she was going to faint. Totally freaked. My mouth went dry. She was panicking, I said quietly, because she realised she was about to be left behind in a dangerous country. Oh, come on, Vanessa rolled her eyes. She wasn't that far behind us. They probably have a help desk or something. She kept saying it wasn't safe, Ruby chimed in, finally lowering her phone. She was like, guys, this country isn't even on the tourist list. Like, okay, we get it, Lena. You saw one TikTok and now you're an expert. She watches too much of that doom content, my mum added. Makes everything sound like a horror story. She was crying, I said. My voice came out quieter than I expected. Wasn't she? The silence that followed wasn't guilty, it was exasperated. She always cries when she's overwhelmed, Vanessa said. It's like her thing. Overreact first, deal later. Marcus looked up from his phone, his jaw tight. You all think this is funny? Zane blinked. It kind of was. I mean, she was acting like she was about to get snatched. You'd think we were in a war zone or something. You were in Nabari, Marcus said sharply. She had every right to be afraid. She's always been dramatic, my mum said, even as a kid. Remember that time she got a paper cut at Ruby's birthday and screamed like she'd lost a finger? I stared at her. She was 4. So? My mum shrugged. They kept talking, more laughter, more jokes, but it all turned into a low, muffled hum in my ears. I could barely hear the words. I was too focused on their faces. They weren't worried. They weren't ashamed. They were amused. It was like watching people describe a funny video they'd seen online. Except the video was my daughter, terrified and alone, begging for help in a place she never should have been. And they were laughing. I don't understand, I said softly. More to myself than to them. How are you like this? Claire, you're making this a bigger deal than it is, Vanessa said. She's probably already sorted it out. We've only been here an hour. She hasn't called, Marcus said. Maybe her phone's dead, Ruby offered. Or she's charging it. Or maybe she's trying to prove a point by making us worry. I turned to Ruby so fast she actually leaned back. You think she's doing this for attention? I didn't say that. But you implied it. My mother stood up now, brushing invisible lint off her capris. Claire, you're obviously emotional. Why don't you go lie down? Take a moment. Everything's fine. Marcus stood too. Everything is not fine. You all seem to think this is a joke. Our daughter is alone in a hostile country, and not one of you is acting like that matters. Zane looked confused. But we're here now. Shouldn't we enjoy the trip? I took a step back. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally realised something I had refused to see for years. They didn't love her. Not really. Not the way she deserved. The laughter had faded, but the tension in the air thickened with every breath I took. I couldn't shake the image of Lena digging through her backpack in panic, her hands shaking, her voice cracking. That level of fear didn't come from losing something. It came from knowing you were about to be left behind and suspecting someone wanted it that way. She double-checked her bag before we even got off the first flight, I murmured, mostly to myself. What? My mum asked. Her passport, I said louder. Lena's careful, obsessively so. She had that thing in a zipped compartment with a clip. She told me that before the trip. She was nervous, so she made sure she kept checking it. Vanessa huffed. Well, clearly not careful enough. My stomach nodded. Unless it wasn't lost. That pulled their attention. I didn't accuse. Not directly. But the words hung there long enough for the temperature in the room to drop. What's that supposed to mean? Zane asked, chewing on the edge of a straw wrapper. Nothing, I said. Yet. I turned to Marcus. Can you go over their itinerary again? He nodded, eyes sharp now. He pulled up the flight confirmations on his phone, the ones Dad had proudly forwarded when they first rerouted. You all left from JFK, connected through Nabari, then flew here, Marcus said. It was a 12-hour layover, plenty of time to realise someone was missing. We assumed she'd catch the next flight, Dad shrugged. You assumed, I repeated, after you watched her realise her passport was gone? Zane smirked. She made such a scene. What did you say? I asked, eyes narrowing. He looked up, surprised. I said she made a scene. Like always. No, before that. You said it like... I paused. You said she deserved it. Zane's face shifted. I didn't mean... You said she deserved to get stuck, I cut in, heart hammering. Why? I didn't mean it, he said. We nens and si te. Why? D and D quickly. I was just... She was being annoying, okay? She kept telling everyone Nabari was dangerous, acting like we were marching into a war zone. Wouldn't stop talking about it. It was exhausting. So someone decided to shut her up? I asked, voice deadly calm. Claire, Vanessa snapped, are you accusing my son of something? I'm asking questions, I replied, because none of this makes sense. A girl that responsible doesn't just lose a passport, not in a country she explicitly said she was afraid of. She was making everyone uncomfortable, Ruby muttered, almost inaudible. I turned toward her. What did you say? Ruby didn't answer. Marcus stepped forward, scrolling through the timestamps on the airline app. You scanned in 5 passengers at the Nabari gate, he said. That means you all had to pass security together. So, he continued. That means Lena was with you up until right before boarding, not hours before, not in a separate part of the airport right there. Silence. Someone knew she wasn't getting on that flight, Marcus finished, and you didn't stop it. Dad stood now, straightening his polo. This is ridiculous. You're turning a simple mistake into a federal case. It's not ridiculous, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. It's suspicious. Zane looked down. His fingers twitched. I watched him chew his bottom lip, something he only did when he lied. I'd seen it 100 times at family dinners, when he'd say he finished his homework or didn't break the vase. And just like that, a pit formed in my stomach, because suddenly I wasn't just afraid for Lena, I was afraid of them. I took a breath so deep it scraped the inside of my chest. I looked at each of them, my parents, Vanessa, Zane, Ruby, their faces, familiar and distant all at once. My voice came out steady, but my hands were clenched tight at my sides. I want to check your bags. A ripple passed through the room, like someone had dropped a rock in a still lake. Vanessa's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? You heard me, I said. I want to look through your carry-ons, all of them. You've got to be kidding, why? My dad barked. My mum stared at me like I'd started foaming at the mouth. Claire, what is wrong with you? Nothing, I said, keeping my voice calm. But if there's even a slight chance Lena's passport ended up in someone's bag by mistake, slipped in during security, fell out during the layover, we need to check. Vanessa crossed her arms. So now we're thieves? I didn't say that. You didn't have to, she snapped. You're implying one of us stole Lena's passport. And what? Just forgot to mention it? No, I said evenly. I'm saying we should rule it out. Zane fidgeted. He looked anywhere but at me. Ruby looked amused. She wasn't even trying to hide the smirk curling her lip. I can't believe you'd even suggest this, my mother said. We are family, Claire. Family. I laughed just once, sharp and bitter. Family doesn't leave someone behind in a hostile country and call it a learning experience. Stop being so emotional, my dad barked. You left my daughter, I snapped. You abandoned her in a foreign airport with no ID, and now you're acting like I'm the problem because I want to check your bags. Marcus stepped forward, voice low and firm. You can either help us search now or explain to the authorities later. Your choice. That silenced them. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Reluctantly, my parents stepped aside. My mother made a show of opening her suitcase and flinging items onto the bed like she wanted to shame me with her cooperation. My dad did the same with grumbling commentary. Vanessa resisted the longest, standing over her designer tote like it was sacred ground. I can't believe I'm doing this, she muttered as she unzipped it. Zane stood frozen, arms limp at his sides. Go on, I said gently, but with steel beneath. Your bag too. He didn't move. Ruby elbowed him. Just open it. He pulled the zipper halfway, but stopped. His hand hovered over the flap. And then, as if the weight of every eye finally got to him, he yanked it open and dumped the contents onto the couch. Crumpled receipts, headphones, a hoodie. No passport. He stepped back quickly, like the bag might explode. I moved from pile to pile, scanning each one. Nothing. No sign of Lena's passport. I started to feel the dread rise again. What if I was wrong? What if I'd turned this entire room upside down for nothing? And then Marcus said, Ruby, she blinked. Your backpack, she hesitated. Why? She asked, arms tightening around it. Marcus didn't answer. He just looked at her until the silence got uncomfortable. Fine, she muttered, dropping the backpack to the floor and unzipping the main compartment. She pulled out a water bottle, a makeup pouch, a pack of gum. Then she stopped. What's in the front pocket? Marcus asked. Ruby hesitated. Just charges. Check it. She opened it slowly, and that's when Zane coughed, loud, abrupt, forced. Everyone's head turned. Ruby seized the distraction and zipped the pocket back up. I stepped forward. Ruby, open the pocket. She glared at me, but didn't move. Then Marcus stepped in, faster than anyone expected. He reached forward, unzipped the pocket himself, and froze. His hand went in, and came out holding Lena's passport. The moment Marcus pulled out the passport, the room seemed to freeze. His fingers gripped it like it might vanish, the edges slightly bent, the cover scuffed in a way only Lena's passport would be, used, careful, lived in. He turned it in his hands, stared at it for a beat too long. Then he looked up, directly at Ruby, her arms crossed defensively. That's not mine. No, Marcus said, it's Lena's. So how did it end up in your bag? I don't know, she muttered. Maybe she dropped it. In your front pocket? I asked, voice hoarse. The one you zipped shut? Zane shifted nervously beside the couch. Ruby stayed silent, but something still didn't feel right. The energy was off. Ruby wasn't panicked. She looked annoyed. I walked over slowly, took the passport from Marcus, and opened it. Inside, Lena's photo looked back at me with an expression I'd seen 1,000 times, wary but strong. Something about the way the passport had been folded didn't sit right. The edges were too clean. It hadn't been shoved into a random bag in panic. It had been placed there deliberately. I turned to Vanessa. Her tote bag was still zipped. "You haven't emptied that one," I said. Vanessa frowned. "It's my purse." "Open it." I just did. "You opened your suitcase?" I said quietly. "Not your tote." She hesitated. Marcus stepped closer. "Now." With a huff, she yanked open the tote and started pulling things out. Sunglasses, receipts, lip balm, travel-size lotion. Then she stopped. Marcus didn't wait. He took the bag from her, reached inside, and unzipped the inner lining. What he pulled out made my knees buckle. Another passport, also Lena's. I stared at it, then at the one I was still holding. My vision blurred as I clutched both. One was expired. One was current. They had both been packed, and somehow both ended up in the hands of people who shouldn't have had them. "What the hell?" Marcus asked. "Why are both passports here?" Vanessa's eyes widened for a split second before she narrowed them again. "I don't know how that got there." Zane made a sound. Not quite a word, not quite a sob. Everyone turned. "I took it," he blurted, eyes wide. "I thought it would be funny." "What?" Vanessa hissed. I took it out of her backpack at the airport. She was being so annoying, kept telling us we were going to die in Nabari, wouldn't shut up. I was going to give it back later, but then... "You said we should just go." You told him to leave it?" I asked, voice breaking. Vanessa glared at Zane, but didn't deny it. "Vanessa," Marcus said, voice low and dangerous. "You knew?" "She was being dramatic," she snapped. "We didn't know she didn't have it until we were already at the gate." "But you still boarded. She said she'd figure it out." My head spun. My family. They knew. They all knew Lena didn't have her passport, and they boarded that plane anyway. They laughed about her panic, mocked her fear, acted like I was overreacting when I said something was wrong, and they knew. My legs gave way and I sank onto the edge of the couch. My fingers gripped the passports like they were the only things anchoring me to this moment. Tears welled up, hot and silent. They didn't fall in gasps or sobs. They just slipped out, quiet, steady, relentless. They had chosen convenience over conscience, and my daughter paid the price. The tears had dried by the time I stood. Not because I was done grieving, but because something colder had taken over. Not anger, not fear, just clarity. I placed both passports gently on the desk beside me and turned toward Marcus. "We're bringing her home," I said. No tremble, no hesitation, just fact. Marcus didn't need to ask what I meant. He was already pulling out his phone, tapping furiously into airline search engines. I sat beside him and opened my laptop, fingers moving without needing direction. The resort Wi-Fi was slow, but my willpower wasn't. Within minutes, I'd pulled up 4 possible flights into Nabari's capital. All red-eyes, all expensive, all risky. "I'll go," Marcus said without looking up. I paused. "You sure?" He nodded once. "You need to stay here. Keep pressing them. Coordinate with Lena if she calls, and if something goes wrong, someone needs to be here to act." It made sense. It also made me want to scream. I closed my eyes for half a second, letting the guilt roll through me, then shoved it aside. "Okay," I said. "Then we're booking 1 flight in, 2 flights out, 1 for you, 1 for her." Marcus nodded. "I'll call the airline and confirm identity protocols. She won't be able to board without a passport. You'll need both. I'll carry both on me." I nodded, grabbing a notepad and writing down everything we needed to verify. Entry requirements, contact for the transit authority, nearest safe hotel, emergency lines in Nabari's language. I wasn't leaving anything to chance. My daughter had already been abandoned once. I would burn the earth before it happened again. In the corner of the room, the rest of my family had gone still. They watched me move, watched Marcus plan, but no one dared speak. I didn't ask them to help. I didn't need them. 10 minutes later, the booking was confirmed. Marcus's flight would depart in 4.5 hours, arriving in Nabari at sunrise. We booked a return flight for him and Lena 26 hours later, enough time to find her, rest, and make it back out. I stood up, pulling our small travel bag from the closet. Marcus began packing quickly, documents, charges, snacks, change of clothes. I handed him a copy of Lena's ID and a printout of her travel insurance. She's strong, I said, more to myself than to him, but she's been alone too long. I'll find her, he said, tightening the straps of his backpack. And I won't let her out of my sight again. As he zipped the last pocket shut, I looked over at the others. My mum had sunk into one of the armchairs. My dad stood by the window, staring out at the beach like it might offer him an escape. Vanessa was scrolling her phone again, pretending not to listen. Zane and Ruby sat close together on the couch, finally quiet. I didn't speak to any of them. There was nothing left to say. I turned back to Marcus. "I'll walk you to the shuttle." He nodded. We stepped into the hallway together, just the two of us. The heavy hotel door clicked shut behind us, muffling everything. The ocean waves, the hum of guilt, the silence of people who knew they'd crossed a line. As we waited for the elevator, Marcus turned to me. "You okay?" I shook my head. "Well, but I will be once she's back." The elevator dinged. We stepped in together. As the doors closed, I took one more breath and let everything else go. Every apology that hadn't come, every excuse that had been made. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about saving my daughter. The moment Marcus stepped into the shuttle and disappeared behind tinted glass, I returned to our suite and locked the door behind me. The silence hit like a wave, oppressive, echoing with everything unsaid. I sat down at the edge of the bed, Lena's passports still in my hand. My phone vibrated, an unknown number. I answered immediately. "Hello?" There was a pause. Then, "Mum?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Lena!" I stood up so fast the cord of the hotel lamp snapped taut. "Are you okay? Where are you?" Her voice shook. "I'm still at the airport. I didn't leave. I didn't know where to go. My SIM card stopped working and the Wi-Fi is terrible. I've been trying to call since yesterday. Nothing would load. I thought something was wrong with my phone." My heart cracked open. "No, baby, no. Everything's okay now. We found your passport. Dad's on his way. He'll be there by sunrise." There was a pause, then a fragile, broken whisper. "You found it?" "In Vanessa's bag." Silence. "I knew it," she said, and then a sound escaped her, a dry, stunned little exhale, like disbelief and betrayal had finally collided in her chest. "I told them I had it. I told them not to reroute. I told them I didn't feel safe." "I know," I whispered. "I believe you." "They said I was being dramatic, that I'd watched too much TikTok. But the second we landed, it was bad. The airport staff didn't want to let us through. Grandpa argued until they allowed the connection. And when I realized the passport was gone, they told me to stay by the desk. I begged them to wait. Oh God, I breathed, eyes burning again. One man offered to fix it for me if I owed him a favor, she said. Another asked if I was married. A guard wouldn't let me sit on the floor. I've been pretending I'm waiting for someone so they don't force me to leave. I pressed my hand to my mouth. Then local police came by, wanted to see ID. I said I lost it. They asked more questions. I said my family left without me. One of them laughed. The other told me I had 1 hour to sort it out or I'd be moved to holding. I clenched the bedsheets. Lena, I said, forcing every word to come out measured, calm. Listen to me. Dad's coming. He's bringing your passport. He's booked a hotel 1 mile from the airport, and he knows where to find you. I want you to stay where you are. Keep pretending someone is coming, and don't talk to anyone else unless absolutely necessary. There was a silence. Then she whispered, "Tell him to hurry." "I will." We hung up. I sat in place for a moment, the hum of rage in my blood louder than the hum of the mini-fridge. Then I stood. They had laughed. They had mocked her. They had left her behind and called it just a delay. I opened my laptop again, logged into the group booking portal for the resort, our suite, Vanessa's suite, my parents' rooms, all under one reservation, all paid by me. Click, click, click. Cancel. I moved on to the flights. Return trip to New York, 5 seats, business class, booked under my credit card. Click, 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 cancel. Let's see how clever they really were. Let's see how they liked navigating the world with no fallback. Let them call the airline. Let them figure out a route back home. Let them fly coach through a 24-hour layover in a noisy terminal with no snacks. Petty? Maybe. Or maybe it was the first time they'd ever tasted a fraction of what they'd put Lena through. I leaned back, watching the cancellation confirmations roll in. Power didn't have to scream. Sometimes it just clicked. Submit. I didn't sleep that night. Every few minutes, I refreshed Marcus's flight tracker, watching his plane inch across the screen toward Nabari like a slow heartbeat. I stared at the glowing dot as if my focus alone could protect them both. The first knock came at 6:43 a.m. Sharp, demanding. Then again, louder, followed by my father's voice on the other side of the door. "Claire, open this door. We need to talk." I didn't move. "Claire, I'm not playing games," he barked. Still nothing. A few seconds later, my mother's voice joined in, shrill and brittle. "You cancelled the hotel reservations without telling us?" Another round of furious knocking. I sat at the desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, staring out the window at the sunrise over the ocean. I hadn't answered a single call or message since Marcus left. Vanessa's voice was next. "Are you serious right now? You really cancelled our flights too. What the hell is wrong with you?" I heard the rattle of the doorknob, then fists pounding again. "We have kids with us, Claire," my mother snapped. "Do you understand how dangerous this is?" Dangerous. Now it's dangerous. I stood slowly, walked to the door, and opened it just wide enough to see their faces, red, sweaty, furious. My father's face twisted. "What the hell are you trying to prove?" "You cancelled everything," my mother hissed. "Do you even realise what you've done?" I opened the door the rest of the way, stepped out into the hallway, and shut it behind me. My voice was steady. "Yes, I cancelled everything." "You didn't even warn us!" Vanessa shouted. I looked at her. "You didn't warn me when you left my daughter behind. She lost her passport," my dad snapped. "She didn't lose it," I said coldly. "It was taken by your grandson and found in your daughter's bag, and you all still got on that plane." "Claire, you are blowing this way out of proportion," my mum said, waving her hand. "You've always been so reactive." I took a step forward. "No," I said, louder now. "You've always called it reactive when I refused to tolerate cruelty." Vanessa folded her arms. "So what? One mistake and we're cut off? That's how it works now?" "One mistake?" I laughed, low and disbelieving. "You rerouted a trip to save a few $100s through a country with no embassy. You mocked Lena when she expressed concern. You let her panic. You watched her fall apart. You chose to leave. She said she'd handle it, my dad shouted. She's 18, I snapped, and scared, and you made a child be her own lifeline. Zane peeked around the corner of the hallway, his expression pale and stunned. Ruby stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes wide. You're punishing all of us for something Zane did, Vanessa snapped. No, I said. I'm holding you accountable for covering it up, for laughing, for pretending nothing happened. My mother's voice dropped into a familiar pleading tone. Claire, please, we have no hotel, no return flight. What are we supposed to do? I smiled slightly. Figure it out. The same way Lena had to. Vanessa shook her head, seething. You're unbelievable. No, I said softly. I'm done being believable to people who only care when their comfort is threatened. I turned, walked back into my suite, and closed the door. The knocking continued for several more minutes. Accusations, guilt trips, angry protests. I ignored them all. For the first time in my life, their voices didn't matter. I had chosen someone else's safety over their convenience, and it felt right. The hallway had gone quiet for a full 10 minutes. Then came another knock, softer this time, almost calculated. I opened the door. They were all still there. My parents, Vanessa, Zane, Ruby. Less frantic now, more indignant. The kind of anger that comes not from fear, but from wounded pride. We need to talk, my mother said. Her voice had lost its pleading tone. Now it was cold, controlled, her version of diplomacy. I stepped out, shut the door behind me again, and faced them fully. Fine, I said. Let's talk. Vanessa stepped forward first. You blindsided us. I warned you when you laughed at her, I replied. You thought I was being dramatic. I wasn't. She's always been dramatic, my mother snapped. Even when she was little, Lena made everything harder than it had to be. I looked at her, really looked at her, and finally said what had been sitting on my tongue for 20 years. No, I said, she's always been different, and that terrified you. My mother blinked. She's mixed. She's smarter than most adults, and she doesn't perform for approval. So instead of accepting her, you treated her like a ticking bomb. Every achievement was too much. Every boundary was an attitude. You made excuses for Ruby's tantrums and Zane's cruelty. But when Lena cried at a birthday party because she didn't want to hit a piñata, you said she was too sensitive. She is too sensitive, my father muttered. She's human, I snapped. And you all acted like that was a flaw. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Here we go again. No, I said, stepping forward. You will listen, because I've listened to all of you for decades. When Lena won a science award, you said she needed to try sports. When she got into early college prep, you said she should learn to relax. But when Ruby brought home a participation ribbon for a dance recital, you framed it like it was a Nobel Prize. She's a child, Vanessa spat. They both are, I said. But only one of them ever got the benefit of the doubt. Silence. You said Lena was dramatic, I continued. You said she lost her passport. You said she'd be fine. But the truth is, you left her. And worse, you knew she didn't have her documents, and you still boarded that plane. I looked at Zane. You took it. He looked down. I turned to Vanessa. And you knew? No one answered. So no, I said softly. I didn't blindside you. I gave you clarity. My mother's lips thinned. You're ruining the family over one mistake. One mistake? I repeated. This isn't one mistake. This is the sum total of every small cruelty, every passive insult, every time you dismissed her voice and minimized her fear. She needed to learn responsibility, my father muttered. She needed protection, I corrected. And the people she trusted the most, her blood, laughed while she begged for help. Vanessa stepped forward. "So, this is it? You're cutting us off?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." Zane's eyes widened. Ruby looked like she was about to say something but didn't. "You think this is righteous?" my mother hissed. "You think Lena's going to thank you for burning bridges?" "No," I said. "I think one day she'll realise her mother finally chose her. Not quietly, not politely, but fully." Then I turned back toward the door, my hand already on the knob. Behind me, I heard my dad mutter, "Ungrateful." I smiled to myself, then said over my shoulder, "Ungrateful is leaving an 18-year-old girl in a country with no embassy and no way out. This is justice." I stepped inside and closed the door. For the first time, I didn't flinch at the sound of my own anger. It felt clean. It felt earned. It felt free. I had barely slept in 30 hours. I couldn't remember the last time I sat for more than 10 minutes without checking my phone. Marcus's flight had landed 20 minutes ago. My eyes were fixed on the elevator at the far end of the resort lobby, as if sheer will could make the doors open faster. And then they did. Marcus stepped out first. His clothes were wrinkled, his face unshaven, but his grip on Lena's hand was firm, protective. She followed a half step behind him. I stood up so quickly the chair nearly toppled. Lena's eyes met mine. Something in her face had changed. Her body was the same. Same shoulders, same long legs, same unruly curls pulled into a tired bun. But her eyes were different, quieter, heavier. The light that had once flickered so brightly there had dimmed, not gone, but distant, buried behind layers of exhaustion and disbelief. She didn't run to me. She walked, and I did the same. When we met in the centre of the marble floor, I wrapped my arms around her and held her like she might disappear if I let go. She didn't cry, neither did I, but I felt her exhale against my shoulder, a breath so deep and long it made my own chest ache. "I've got you now," I whispered. You don't have to be strong by yourself anymore." Her fingers clutched the back of my shirt. We stood like that for what felt like minutes. When we finally pulled apart, she glanced around. "Are they here?" "They tried to be," I said. "They're gone now." "Good." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "Ready to go upstairs?" She nodded. We walked together through the lobby, past the front desk, where the receptionist gave me a small, understanding smile. I hadn't explained anything, but maybe she'd seen enough families implode to know this wasn't just about flights and bookings. Back in the suite, Lena sat on the bed and took off her shoes. She looked smaller, somehow, not in body, but in energy. Like the weight of what she'd carried had compressed her from the inside out. Marcus disappeared into the bathroom to wash up. I sat beside her. "You did everything right," I said. "You stayed calm, you stayed safe, you waited. That was all I needed." She nodded slowly. "There were moments I thought no one was coming." My throat tightened. I didn't want to panic. I knew if I looked too lost, I'd be a target. I reached over and took her hand. "You shouldn't have had to think like that." I kept waiting for Grandma to call, or Aunt Vanessa, but no one did, not even Ruby. I didn't speak. "I knew they didn't really like me," she added, "but I didn't think they'd actually leave." "They didn't just leave," I said. "They watched you fall apart and still chose themselves. That's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their capacity." She gave a small, almost hollow laugh. "That's such a mum thing to say." "I know," I said, squeezing her hand, but it's also true. We didn't speak for a while after that, just sat together in the quiet, letting it hold us. Eventually, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "Can we just stay here for a while?" she asked. "We already extended the trip," I told her. "It's just us now. No more drama, no more performance gear." She nodded. The sun was rising again, painting gold stripes across the bedspread. Lena closed her eyes. For the first time in days, her face softened. And for the first time in months, I felt like a mother who had truly done something right. The next few days passed like a balm. No agendas, no excursions, no awkward family dinners. Just the three of us, Marcus, Lena and me, reclaiming silence, sleep and small comforts. We took long walks along the shoreline, the sun warming our backs, the waves curling at our feet like gentle apologies from the world. Lena didn't talk much, but she didn't need to. Her shoulders were looser now, her steps less guarded. She read by the pool, feet dangling in the water, her nose buried in a worn paperback I'd packed for her months ago. Marcus brought her fresh coconut juice every morning. I rubbed aloe on the sunburn she didn't realize she had. We weren't fixing what had happened, but we were offering something just as powerful: space to be unbroken in her own time. One afternoon, while Lena napped, I sat on the balcony and opened my financial dashboard. The numbers stared back at me, dozens of auto payments, scheduled transfers, credit cards, carrying charges not mine. My mother's insurance premium, my father's car lease, Vanessa's kids' tutoring, flight points, streaming services, grocery reimbursements, all threads in a web of obligation I'd spun for years. I selected each one: cancel, unlink, stop. With every click, something heavy lifted. Not just from my wallet, but from my spirit. They hadn't just taken Lena for granted. They'd taken me for granted too. And now I was done. No announcements, no warnings, no dramatic exit, just silence. When Marcus returned from picking up lunch, he found me sitting cross-legged on the bed, laptop closed, eyes dry for the first time in days. "You okay?" he asked gently. I nodded. "Better?" He leaned down, kissed my forehead, and handed me a bowl of fresh fruit. Later that evening, while Lena and Marcus played cards at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a call from a number I hadn't saved. I almost didn't answer. But something nudged me. Curiosity, maybe, or hope. "Hello?" "Claire," I froze. The voice was familiar, but older, softer. "Aunt Renee?" I asked. "Yes," she said, exhaling. "I'm sorry to call out of the blue. I've been meaning to reach out since I heard what happened." I swallowed. "You heard? Your mum tried to spin it like a miscommunication, but I got the full story from your cousin." "Claire." "I'm so sorry for everything." My throat tightened. "I should have spoken up years ago," she continued. "I saw how they treated Lena. How they treated you. I thought if I stayed quiet, I'd keep the peace. But silence isn't peace. It's permission." I didn't know what to say. Just listening to her voice cracked something open in me, something gentler than rage, something like release. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't know if this is appropriate," she said, "but if Lena ever needs a change of pace, a safe place, my house is always open. It's quiet. She could finish school here. No pressure, just an option." I closed my eyes. A single tear slipped down my cheek, not of grief, but of relief. "I'll let her know," I said. "She'll appreciate that more than you know." After we hung up, I stood for a long time by the window, watching the last light dip behind the horizon. There was still damage to mend, but for the first time there was also a path forward. Not everyone in the family was lost. Not every bridge had burned. And maybe, just maybe, there was room to rebuild, on our terms, with people who chose us freely. When we returned home, The real unravelling began. The moment the wheels of the plane touched down, the group chats started pinging. Cousins, aunts, distant uncles, people I hadn't heard from in years, suddenly wanted to check in to ask if everything was okay. It didn't take long to figure out why. My family, the ones who had laughed as they boarded a plane without Lena, had gotten ahead of the story. They'd told everyone it was a misunderstanding, that Lena had misplaced her passport, that they'd tried to help, but she insisted she'd handle it, that I'd overreacted, taken things too far, and made it about myself. Vanessa, in particular, had been busy. She'd spun herself into a martyr, painting a picture of chaos and confusion, of a poor single mom being publicly humiliated by her own sister for something beyond her control. She left out the part where her son had taken the passport. She left out the part where she'd known and said nothing. They were so committed to the fiction, they forgot I'd never played by their rules to begin with. The first message came from my Aunt Susan. "Hey, hon, your mum said there was some drama on the trip. She's really upset. What happened? Hope you and Lena are okay." Then another, from a cousin I hadn't seen in a decade. "Heard there was some kind of emergency. You doing okay? Your mum sounded really worried." Worried. That word hit me like a slap. Worried was how I felt, standing in a lobby with no idea where my daughter was. Worried was what kept me awake at night, picturing Lena surrounded by strangers in a country with no embassy. Worried wasn't what they were. They were exposed, embarrassed, desperate to rewrite the narrative. So I gave them one. Not with a dramatic post, not with rage, just a message. I opened the group chat labelled Family, All Generations, a relic of birthdays and holiday planning. I hadn't typed in it in months, maybe years. And then I wrote, "To clarify what happened during the trip, Vanessa rerouted our flights through Nabari, a level 4 do not travel zone. My daughter Lena voiced concerns about safety and was mocked. Zane took her passport as a joke. Vanessa discovered it before boarding. They left her behind anyway. No one stayed. No one contacted me. Lena was stranded alone in a dangerous country without ID, support, or an embassy. When confronted, the group laughed about it. I cancelled their rooms and flights. That's the story." Then I hit send. Nothing more. No defence. No attack. Just facts. The silence afterward was glorious. Some left the chat. Others read and never responded. Only one person, my cousin Olivia, replied privately. "I'm so sorry." That's horrifying. Thank you for telling the truth. I screenshotted the message and saved it, not for revenge, just as a reminder. That even in families built on silence, someone always notices the cracks. A day later, my mother called. I didn't answer. She texted, "We don't air dirty laundry to outsiders, Claire." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed, "You left a child in a foreign country. That wasn't laundry, that was a fire." Then I blocked her number. I did the same for my father. Vanessa tried once more. She sent a long, rambling email with the subject line, "If you ever want to rebuild," I didn't even open it. I forwarded it to a folder titled Boundary Keep Closed. That week, I removed myself from every family plan, subscription and responsibility. Health insurance, phone bills, shared Netflix, gone. No announcements, just deleted access. They'd notice when they tried to use it, and if they complained, that was no longer my concern. Marcus and I spent the following weekend repainting Lena's room. She chose soft sage green for the walls, white shelves for her growing book collection, and a chair by the window where the light hit just right. She said, "I want this space to feel like mine." and we made it happen. One night, as we were putting together the last piece of her new desk, she asked quietly, "Do you think they'll ever really understand what they did?" I looked at her and said, "I don't know, and I don't need them to." She nodded. I think I stopped needing that too. We smiled at each other. It wasn't a happy ending smile. It was something deeper, earned. Somewhere in the distance, my phone buzzed again. I didn't look. 2 weeks after we returned home, Lena called me into her room. She was sitting at her new desk, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The sun caught the gold strands in her curls, making her look older than 18, wiser in a way I wished she hadn't earned so soon. "I wrote something," she said, not looking at me. I stepped closer, reading the screen over her shoulder. It was a blog post, simple title, clean white background, black font. What I learned when my family left me in a do not travel country without a passport. She scrolled slowly, letting me absorb it at my own pace. It wasn't angry, it wasn't vengeful, it was thoughtful, restrained, and piercingly honest. She wrote about how she'd prepared for the trip, how she voiced concerns and was told to relax, how she kept checking her bag out of fear, how she trusted the wrong people because she didn't think family could be dangerous, how silence became more terrifying than shouting, and how she spent nearly 36 hours pretending to be okay in a place that did not want her there. But it was the last line that broke me open. They said it was to teach me a lesson about responsibility, but I think what they really taught me was who not to trust, and what it means to choose myself when no one else does. I blinked fast, trying not to let the tears blur the screen. "You're brave," I whispered. "I didn't name names," she said quickly. "I didn't want it to be about revenge. Just truth." "Truth is enough," I said. "It always is." She hit publish. At first, it got a few likes, then shares. Then someone with a big following reposted it on a parenting forum. Within 48 hours, it had exploded. Hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of comments, not just from angry readers, but from survivors, people who had been scapegoated in their families, who had been the too sensitive child, who had been told to stay quiet for the sake of peace, and learned too late that silence is just another form of harm. One comment read, "I thought I was the only one who grew up with a family who used shame as control. Thank you for writing this." Another, "This is not about drama. This is about survival. Your mum is a hero." I read them all. So did Lena. She didn't smile the way a teenager might after going viral. She read quietly, nodding every so often, as if slowly realizing the ripple her truth had created. That weekend, she was invited to speak on a podcast, then a panel for young women navigating toxic family dynamics. She declined both, not because she didn't have something to say, but because she no longer felt the need to explain herself to the world. "I wrote it for me," she told me, "and for people like me, that's enough." It was. The morning after the article hit its peak, I stood on our porch with a cup of coffee, watching the neighbourhood wake up. Kids on bikes, dogs tugging at leashes, someone watering their plants across the street. Everything looked the same, but I wasn't. For years, I had operated under a quiet ache, the need to be the bridge between everyone, the glue that held broken parts together. The fixer, the explainer, the peacekeeper. I'd twisted myself into someone digestible, someone non-threatening, someone who could be depended on only when it suited others. But something had shifted. The shame was gone. The guilt, too. In its place was something cleaner. Not joy, not quite, but freedom. That night, as Lena curled up on the couch with Marcus, laughing at some stupid show, I scrolled back through her blog post one more time, not to read it, just to see her name at the top. She had chosen to speak, and I had chosen to let go. We didn't need the family's approval. We didn't need their money, their commentary, or their carefully curated stories. We had each other. And the story we told ourselves now, the one that mattered, was honest, unfiltered, and finally ours. In the end, I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped building new ones for people who were never going to cross them. I stopped opening doors for people who only ever slammed them behind me. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I simply said goodbye and walked away lighter than I'd ever been.